This is Mental Forge, where weakness burns and warriors are built. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning with a mind so disciplined, so focused, and so aligned with success that every thought you think moves you closer to your dreams. Picture yourself possessing the mental clarity of Marcus Aurelius, the unwavering determination of Thomas Edison, and the visionary thinking of Henry Ford. This is not fantasy. This is your birthright. This is what happens when you learn to train your thoughts for success every single day. Right now, in this very moment, you have within you the same creative power that built empires, invented revolutionary technologies, and transformed entire civilizations. The only difference between you and those legendary figures is not talent, not luck, not circumstances. The difference is in how they trained their minds to think, to believe, and to act in alignment with their deepest purpose. Today, you're going to discover the profound secrets that will transform not just how you think, but who you become. By the time we finish this journey together, you'll possess a complete framework for mental mastery that will serve you for the rest of your life. You'll understand how to build unshakable belief, eliminate fear through systematic practice, rewire your subconscious mind for abundance, and develop the kind of mental discipline that turns dreams into inevitable realities. The human mind processes over 60,000 thoughts per day. Most people let these thoughts run wild, like an untrained horse galloping in every direction. But the truly successful individuals throughout history understood a fundamental truth that Napoleon Hill discovered after studying over 500 of the world's most successful people. They learned that thoughts are things, and when properly directed, they become the building blocks of extraordinary achievement. Consider the story of Andrew Carnegie, a man who arrived in America as a poor Scottish immigrant and became one of the wealthiest individuals in human history. Carnegie didn't succeed because he was born into privilege or because he had access to secret information. He succeeded because he understood how to train his thoughts for success. Every morning, Carnegie would spend time visualizing his goals as already accomplished. He would see himself as the successful businessman he intended to become, feel the emotions of that success, and then carry that mental image with him throughout his day. Carnegie discovered what modern neuroscience now confirms. When you consistently think thoughts of success, prosperity, and achievement, you literally rewire your brain's neural pathways. Your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. When you repeatedly think thoughts of success with emotional intensity, your subconscious accepts these thoughts as your new reality and begins to guide your actions, decisions, and even opportunities toward making that mental image manifest in your physical world. This is why James Allen wrote in his timeless classic, "As a man thinketh," that you are literally what you think about most of the time. Your thoughts are not random occurrences happening to you. They are the primary creative force in your life. Every circumstance, every relationship, every achievement, and every challenge in your life began as a thought in someone's mind. The question is, are you going to be the architect of your own thoughts, or are you going to let them be shaped by circumstances, other people's opinions, and random external events? The first principle of training your thoughts for success is to understand that your mind is like a garden. Just as a gardener carefully selects which seeds to plant and which weeds to remove, you must become the master gardener of your mental landscape. Every thought you allow to take root in your mind will eventually bear fruit in your external world. Plant thoughts of abundance, and abundance will grow. Plant thoughts of fear and limitation, and those too will flourish. Thomas Edison understood this principle profoundly. When Edison was working on the incandescent light bulb, he failed over 1,000 times. But Edison never saw these as failures. He trained his mind to view each unsuccessful attempt as valuable information that brought him one step closer to success. He would say, "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work." This wasn't positive thinking or empty optimism. This was strategic mental conditioning that allowed Edison to persist when others would have given up. Edison developed what he called his genius gap, a specific mental practice where he would sit in a chair holding steel balls in his hands, allowing his mind to drift into a drowsy state between sleeping and waking. When the balls dropped and woke him, he would immediately write down whatever insights came to him. Edison understood that breakthrough ideas come not from forcing the mind, but from training it to access different states of consciousness where creative solutions naturally emerge. This brings us to the second fundamental principle, the power of consistency over intensity. Jeff Olson, in The Slight Edge, reveals that success is not about making massive, dramatic changes. Success comes from making small, positive choices consistently over time. The same principle applies to training your thoughts. You don't need to completely transform your thinking overnight. You need to make small, consistent improvements in your mental habits every single day. Start each morning with what I call the Success Trinity, 3 fundamental practices that will begin rewiring your mind for achievement from the moment you wake up. First, spend 5 minutes in visualization, seeing yourself already living the life you desire. Second, spend 5 minutes writing in a gratitude journal, focusing on what's already working in your life. Third, spend 5 minutes reading or listening to something that inspires and educates you about success, prosperity, or personal growth. These 15 minutes may seem insignificant, but remember what the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said: "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." These small daily practices compound over time, creating massive transformation in your thinking patterns, your emotional state, and ultimately your results. If you're finding value in these insights and you want to continue receiving practical strategies for success and personal growth, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We're building a community of individuals committed to excellence, and your engagement helps us reach more people who are ready to transform their lives through the power of trained thinking. Let me share with you the story of one of history's most remarkable examples of mental discipline and thought training, Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome. Despite wielding almost unlimited power, Marcus Aurelius understood that true strength came not from external authority, but from mastering his own mind. Every morning, he would write in his personal journal, examining his thoughts, questioning his assumptions, and redirecting his mental energy toward wisdom, justice, and virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He understood that while he couldn't control the circumstances around him, wars, political challenges, personal losses, he could always control his response to those circumstances. This is the foundation of all mental mastery, recognizing that between any stimulus and your response, there is a space, and in that space lies your power to choose your thoughts. The Roman emperor developed what we might call premeditation exercises, mental rehearsals where he would imagine facing various challenges and practice responding with wisdom rather than emotion. If he anticipated a difficult meeting with his advisors, he would mentally rehearse remaining calm, listening carefully, and responding with measured wisdom. If he knew he might face criticism or setbacks, he would practice maintaining his inner peace regardless of external circumstances. This practice of mental rehearsal is not just ancient wisdom, it's cutting-edge neuroscience. When you mentally rehearse successful outcomes, you're literally creating neural pathways in your brain that make those outcomes more likely to occur. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. This is why Olympic athletes spend countless hours in mental training, visualizing perfect performances. The brain builds the same neural connections whether you're actually performing the activity or just imagining it in rich detail. Napoleon Bonaparte, despite his eventual downfall, demonstrated extraordinary mental discipline in his rise to power. Napoleon would spend hours studying maps, not just of current battlefields, but of territories he had never seen. He would visualize every possible scenario, every potential move his enemies might make, and every strategic response he could employ. By the time he actually engaged in battle, he had already fought and won that battle hundreds of times in his mind. Napoleon said, "I can see that I am not as others are. I am living constantly in the future." He understood that successful people don't live in the past, reliving their failures and disappointments. They don't live in present circumstances that may be challenging or limiting. They live in the future they are creating, through their thoughts, decisions, and actions. This brings us to one of the most powerful aspects of thought training, learning to live from your vision rather than your current circumstances. Most people make the mistake of letting their current situation determine their thoughts and emotions. If they're currently struggling financially, they think thoughts of lack and limitation. If they're currently facing challenges in their relationships or career, They focus their mental energy on those problems. But extraordinary achievers do exactly the opposite. They use their thoughts to create their future, regardless of their current circumstances. They understand what Napoleon Hill called definiteness of purpose, the ability to focus your mental energy on a specific, clearly defined goal with such intensity and consistency that your subconscious mind accepts it as inevitable. Hill spent over 20 years studying the most successful people of his era, including Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and over 500 other highly successful individuals. What he discovered was that they all shared one common characteristic. They all had definiteness of purpose. They knew exactly what they wanted to achieve, they had written plans for achieving it, and they focused their thoughts on their objectives with unwavering consistency. Henry Ford exemplified this principle perfectly. When Ford decided to create the first affordable automobile for the masses, everyone told him it was impossible. His own engineers said the V8 engine he envisioned couldn't be built. But Ford had trained his mind to focus on possibilities rather than limitations. He told his team, "Go ahead and stay on the job until you succeed, no matter how much time is required." For months, his engineers continued to tell him it couldn't be done. Ford's response was always the same: "Go ahead, I want it, and I'll have it." Finally, as if by a stroke of magic, the secret was discovered. The impossible became possible because Ford had trained his mind to reject limitation and focus exclusively on the desired outcome. Ford understood what modern quantum physicists are now discovering. Consciousness plays a fundamental role in creating reality. When you observe something, when you focus your mental attention on it consistently, you literally influence its probability of occurring. This isn't mystical thinking. It's the cutting edge of scientific understanding about the relationship between mind and matter. The third principle of thought training is understanding the power of your subconscious mind. Dr. Joseph Murphy, in The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, explains that your subconscious is like a faithful servant that never sleeps, never questions, and always works to manifest whatever you consistently impress upon it. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between positive and negative instructions. It simply accepts whatever thoughts you repeat most frequently and with the greatest emotional intensity. This is why it's crucial to understand that worry is negative goal setting. When you worry about something, you're actually instructing your subconscious mind to create that very outcome. You're visualizing what you don't want with emotional intensity, and your subconscious faithfully works to manifest that mental image in your physical reality. The solution is to replace worry with what Earl Nightingale called constructive mental activity. Instead of imagining worst-case scenarios, train your mind to focus on best-case scenarios. Instead of rehearsing failure, rehearse success. Instead of dwelling on problems, concentrate your mental energy on solutions. Let me share with you a powerful daily practice that will begin reprogramming your subconscious mind immediately. Every night before you go to sleep, write down 3 specific things you accomplished that day, no matter how small. Then write down 3 specific things you're grateful for. Finally, write down 3 specific goals or intentions for the following day. This practice accomplishes several important things simultaneously. First, it focuses your mind on what's working rather than what's not working. Second, it cultivates an attitude of gratitude that naturally attracts more positive experiences into your life. Third, it programs your subconscious mind with clear instructions for what you want to accomplish, allowing your mind to work on solutions while you sleep. John D. Rockefeller, who became the world's first billionaire, understood the power of this principle. Rockefeller would spend time every morning and evening in what he called quiet reflection, reviewing his goals, visualizing their achievement, and planning his next steps. He said, "I believe that every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity, an obligation, every possession, a duty." Rockefeller understood that success wasn't just about accumulating wealth, but about training his mind to think and act in ways that naturally created value for others. Rockefeller's mental discipline was legendary. Even during the most challenging periods of his business career, when he was facing intense criticism and legal challenges, he maintained his focus on long-term objectives rather than short-term obstacles. He trained his mind to see beyond immediate circumstances to the larger patterns and possibilities that others missed. This ability to maintain long-term focus despite short-term challenges is one of the most valuable mental skills you can develop. Most people live in a constant state of reaction, letting their emotions and thoughts be determined by whatever happens to them moment by moment. But successful people train their minds to stay focused on their chosen objectives, regardless of temporary setbacks or distractions. Winston Churchill demonstrated this mental discipline during World War II, when Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany. When the odds seemed impossible, Churchill trained his mind to focus not on the current dire circumstances, but on the ultimate victory he knew was possible. He famously said, "Never give in. Never, never, never give in." This wasn't mere stubbornness. It was strategic mental conditioning that enabled him to inspire an entire nation to persist until victory was achieved. Churchill understood what psychologists now call cognitive reframing, the ability to change your interpretation of events in ways that serve your larger purposes. Instead of seeing challenges as problems, Churchill trained his mind to see them as opportunities to develop strength, wisdom, and character. Instead of focusing on what he couldn't control, he concentrated his mental energy on what he could influence through his thoughts, words, and actions. This brings us to the fourth principle of thought training: the power of identity. Your actions are always consistent with how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with money, you'll unconsciously sabotage opportunities for financial success. If you see yourself as someone who has difficulty maintaining relationships, you'll unconsciously behave in ways that create relationship problems. But if you see yourself as naturally successful, naturally wealthy, and naturally capable of achieving your goals, you'll automatically think thoughts and take actions that align with that identity. Bob Proctor, in You Were Born Rich, explains that most people approach success backwards. They think they need to have certain things in order to do certain activities, so they can be the person they want to become. But the actual sequence is exactly reversed. You must first be the person who would naturally achieve your goals. Then you'll naturally do the things that person would do, and then you'll naturally have the results that person would have. This means that thought training is really identity training. Every time you choose to think a successful thought instead of a limiting thought, you're reinforcing your identity as a successful person. Every time you choose to focus on possibilities instead of problems, you're strengthening your identity as someone who creates solutions. Every time you choose to persist instead of giving up, you're building your identity as someone who achieves their objectives. Leonardo da Vinci understood this principle profoundly. Da Vinci didn't see himself merely as a painter or an inventor. He saw himself as a student of life itself, someone whose purpose was to understand and create beauty, functionality, and innovation in every area of human experience. This expansive identity allowed him to excel in painting, sculpture, engineering, anatomy, architecture, astronomy, and dozens of other fields. Da Vinci trained his mind to see connections where others saw only separate subjects. He understood that the same principles that governed the flow of water could be applied to understanding human circulation. The same mathematical ratios that created beautiful art could be used to design more efficient machines. This cross-pollination of ideas was possible because Da Vinci had trained his mind to think systemically rather than in isolated categories. You can develop this same kind of expansive thinking by regularly asking yourself connecting questions. How does this principle apply to other areas of my life? What patterns do I notice across different situations? How can I use what I'm learning in one area to solve challenges in completely different areas? This kind of thinking naturally expands your creative problem-solving abilities and accelerates your progress toward your goals. The fifth principle of thought training involves understanding the role of emotion in creating lasting change. Thoughts without emotion are relatively powerless. But thoughts combined with intense emotion become irresistible forces that reshape your entire reality. This is why visualization exercises are most effective when you not only see your desired outcomes, but feel the emotions you would experience when those outcomes are achieved. Napoleon Hill discovered that the most successful people he studied had learned to generate what he called burning desire, an emotional intensity around their goals that made achievement feel inevitable rather than merely possible. This burning desire wasn't just wanting something, it was a complete emotional commitment that made the goal feel more real than current circumstances. Mahatma Gandhi exemplified this principle during India's struggle for independence. Gandhi didn't simply think about freedom. He felt the emotional reality of independence so intensely that it became more real to him than the current circumstances of British rule. This emotional intensity allowed him to persist through decades of struggle, inspiring millions of others to join the movement for independence. Gandhi trained his mind through daily meditation, prayer, and reflection to maintain emotional alignment with his deepest values and objectives. He understood that external circumstances are temporary, but the internal commitment to your principles and purposes is eternal. This is why he could maintain his composure and clarity, even when facing imprisonment, violence, and seemingly impossible obstacles. The practice Gandhi used can be adapted for any goal or objective. Spend time each day not only thinking about what you want to achieve, but feeling the emotions you would experience when you achieve it. Feel the pride, the satisfaction, the joy, the peace, the excitement. Make these emotions so real and so intense that your current circumstances begin to feel temporary and your desired outcomes begin to feel inevitable. This emotional rehearsal serves several important functions. First, it trains your nervous system to be comfortable with success, reducing the unconscious resistance that often sabotages achievement. Second, it activates what psychologists call the reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters information and notices opportunities related to your dominant thoughts and emotions. Third, it creates what Napoleon Hill called autosuggestion, the process by which your conscious mind communicates your desires to your subconscious mind in ways that produce concrete results. I want to pause here for a moment to acknowledge something important. If you're watching this video, it means you're someone who is committed to growth, to improvement, to becoming the best version of yourself. That commitment deserves recognition and support. I hope you'll consider subscribing to our channel if you haven't already, because we're creating content specifically for people like you, people who understand that success is not an accident, but the result of systematic preparation and consistent action. Now, let's explore the sixth principle of thought training, the compound effect of daily mental disciplines. Darren Hardy, in The Compound Effect, demonstrates that small, consistent actions create massive results over time. The same principle applies to your thought patterns. Small improvements in your daily thinking habits create dramatic transformations in your life outcomes. Consider the story of Benjamin Franklin, one of history's most accomplished individuals. Franklin didn't achieve success in diplomacy, business, science, and literature by accident. He developed what he called his 13 virtues, specific character traits he wanted to develop, and he focused on improving one virtue each week. Franklin understood that you cannot improve everything simultaneously, but you can make consistent progress by focusing on small improvements over time. Franklin's approach to mental training involved daily self-examination. Each evening, he would review his actions and thoughts from that day, noting areas where he had succeeded in living according to his chosen virtues and areas where he needed improvement. This wasn't self-criticism, it was strategic self-awareness designed to create continuous improvement in his character and capabilities. You can apply Franklin's method by choosing 3 specific mental habits you want to develop. Perhaps you want to replace worry with constructive planning. Maybe you want to replace criticism with appreciation. Or you might want to replace reactive thinking with proactive thinking. Focus on one habit at a time, spending a full week paying attention to that particular aspect of your mental patterns. At the end of each day, honestly assess your progress. When did you successfully demonstrate the new mental habit? When did you fall back into old patterns? What triggers tend to activate the old thinking? What strategies can you develop to make the new thinking more automatic? This systematic approach to mental development creates lasting change because it addresses the underlying patterns rather than just the surface behaviors. Nikola Tesla, the brilliant inventor and visionary, developed extraordinary mental discipline through systematic practice. Tesla could design, build, and test entire machines completely in his mind before ever creating a physical prototype. He would run these mental machines for weeks, checking for wear and making improvements, all in his imagination. When he finally built the physical version, it would work exactly as he had envisioned. Tesla's mental abilities weren't innate gifts. They were developed through systematic training. He would spend hours each day in focused concentration, building his capacity to hold complex images in his mind and manipulate them mentally. He understood that the mind, like any other capacity, becomes stronger through consistent, progressive exercise. You can develop similar mental capacities by practicing what I call mental rehearsal exercises. Start with simple scenarios. Mentally rehearse having a successful conversation with someone important to you. See yourself speaking with confidence, listening with genuine interest, and achieving the outcomes you desire. Make the mental movie as detailed as possible, including not just visual elements, but sounds, feelings, and emotions. As your mental rehearsal abilities strengthen, you can apply them to more complex scenarios. Mentally rehearse giving a successful presentation, launching a new business venture, or achieving any important goal. The key is to make these mental rehearsals as vivid and detailed as possible, and to practice them consistently until the successful outcome feels natural and inevitable. The seventh principle of thought training involves understanding the relationship between your thoughts and your physical reality. Modern quantum physics reveals that consciousness and matter are more intimately connected than we previously understood. Your thoughts don't just influence your behavior, they influence the very fabric of reality around you. This isn't mystical speculation, it's scientific fact. When you consistently think thoughts of abundance, opportunity, and success, you literally change your brain's neural pathways, which changes your perceptions, which changes what you notice in your environment, which changes the opportunities you recognize and the actions you take. These changes in your actions create changes in your results, which reinforce your original thoughts, creating an upward spiral of continuous improvement. Wallace D. Wattles, in The Science of Getting Rich, explained that there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and your thoughts impress themselves upon this thinking stuff to create your external circumstances. While Wattles was writing over a century ago, modern research in fields like epigenetics and quantum mechanics suggests that consciousness plays a much more active role in creating reality than mainstream science previously acknowledged. The practical application of this understanding is profound. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, you can begin to see yourself as the conscious creator of your experiences. This doesn't mean you control everything that happens to you, but it means you have far more influence over your circumstances than most people realize. Alexander the Great understood this principle when he set out to conquer the known world. Alexander didn't just have military strategies, he had what we might call reality-shaping strategies. He would spend time visualizing not just military victories, but the cultural integration and lasting empire he intended to create. He saw himself not merely as a conqueror, but as someone who would unite diverse cultures and create a new form of civilization. Alexander's ability to hold this expansive vision while simultaneously managing the practical details of military campaigns was extraordinary. He understood that great achievements require both visionary thinking and tactical execution. You can't just dream about success. You must also take concrete, persistent action toward your objectives. But you also can't just take action without a clear vision of what you're trying to create. This balance between vision and action is what separates successful people from both dreamers, who never act, and busy people who work hard but lack clear direction. Your thoughts must be both inspirational enough to motivate consistent action and practical enough to guide effective decision-making. The eighth principle of thought training involves developing what Charles F. Haanel, in the Master Key System, called scientific mental processes. Most people approach thinking haphazardly, letting their minds wander from topic to topic without conscious direction. But you can learn to think with the same precision and intentionality that scientists use when conducting experiments. This means learning to think in terms of cause and effect. Every result in your life is the effect of specific causes. If you want different results, you must identify and change the causes that create those results. Most of those causes are mental: the thoughts you think, the beliefs you hold, the emotions you cultivate, and the decisions you make based on your mental processes. Theodore Roosevelt exemplified this scientific approach to thinking. When Roosevelt decided to build the Panama Canal, he didn't just announce the decision and hope for the best. He systematically analyzed every aspect of the challenge: the engineering obstacles, the political complications, the financial requirements, the logistical problems. He identified each cause that might prevent success and developed specific strategies to address each cause. Roosevelt understood that massive achievements require systematic thinking. You can't just want something and expect it to happen. You must identify all the factors that contribute to success. Develop strategies to maximize those factors. Identify all the obstacles that might prevent success, and develop strategies to overcome those obstacles. This level of systematic thinking turns dreams into achievable plans. You can apply this same systematic approach to any goal or objective. Start by clearly defining exactly what you want to achieve. Then ask yourself, what are all the factors that would contribute to achieving this goal? What knowledge do I need to acquire? What skills do I need to develop? What relationships do I need to build? What resources do I need to obtain? What obstacles am I likely to encounter? And how can I prepare to overcome them? This analytical approach to goal achievement eliminates much of the uncertainty and fear that prevents most people from pursuing their biggest dreams. When you've systematically thought through all the factors involved in achieving your objective, the goal stops feeling overwhelming and starts feeling like a manageable series of specific tasks and decisions. The ninth principle of thought training involves understanding the power of mental associations. Your mind naturally links ideas, emotions, and experiences together. These associations largely determine your automatic responses to different situations. Successful people consciously create empowering associations that support their objectives, while unsuccessful people often carry disempowering associations that sabotage their efforts. Dr. Maxwell Maltz, in Psycho-Cybernetics, explains that your self-image, your mental picture of yourself, acts like a thermostat that regulates your performance. If you have positive associations with success, wealth, and achievement, you'll naturally move toward those outcomes. But if you have negative associations with those same concepts, you'll unconsciously sabotage your efforts to achieve them. Julius Caesar understood the power of mental associations when he crossed the Rubicon River. Caesar knew that crossing the river meant there was no turning back. It was either victory or death. Instead of allowing this to create fear and hesitation, Caesar used it to create absolute commitment and determination. He associated crossing the river not with danger, but with the beginning of his greatest achievements. Caesar's famous declaration, "The die is cast," represented his complete mental commitment to success. He had trained his mind to associate bold action with victory rather than with risk. This mental association allowed him to act with the kind of decisive confidence that made victory possible. You can consciously create empowering associations by regularly visualizing your goals in connection with positive emotions and successful outcomes. Instead of thinking about your financial goals with anxiety about whether you can achieve them, train your mind to associate those goals with excitement about the positive impact you'll create when you achieve them. Instead of thinking about challenges with fear of failure, associate challenges with anticipation of the growth and strength you'll develop by overcoming them. The 10th principle of thought training involves developing what I call strategic patience. The ability to maintain long-term focus while taking consistent short-term action. Most people either become so focused on immediate results that they give up when success doesn't come quickly, or they become so focused on long-term outcomes that they fail to take consistent daily action. J.P. Morgan exemplified strategic patience throughout his career. Morgan understood that building lasting wealth required thinking in terms of decades rather than quarters. He would make investments and business decisions based on his assessment of long-term trends and opportunities, even when those decisions were unpopular or seemed to contradict short-term market conditions. But Morgan also understood that long-term success requires consistent short-term execution. He developed detailed systems and processes to ensure that his daily actions were always aligned with his long-term objectives. He didn't just have big dreams, he had specific daily practices that moved him systematically toward those dreams. This combination of long-term vision and short-term consistency is perhaps the most challenging aspect of mental training, because it requires you to maintain faith in outcomes you cannot yet see while taking actions that may not produce immediate results. But this is exactly what separates extraordinary achievers from ordinary people. You can develop strategic patience by creating what I call milestone markers, specific, measurable progress indicators that show you're moving in the right direction even when the ultimate goal is still distant. Instead of just having a goal to build a successful business, create monthly revenue targets, customer acquisition goals, and skill development objectives that demonstrate consistent progress. These milestone markers serve two important functions. First, they provide regular feedback that keeps you motivated and focused. Second, they allow you to make course corrections before small problems become major obstacles. Strategic patience doesn't mean passive waiting. It means active persistence with systematic adjustment based on results and changing conditions. The 11th principle of thought training involves understanding what Ray Dalio, in Principles, calls radical transparency, the willingness to honestly examine your thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions without ego or defensiveness. Most people protect their existing beliefs even when those beliefs limit their potential, because changing beliefs requires admitting that previous thinking was incomplete or incorrect. But extraordinary achievers understand that beliefs are tools, not possessions. If a belief serves your objectives and produces positive results, it's useful. If a belief limits your potential or produces negative results, it should be examined and potentially replaced, regardless of how long you've held it or how comfortable it feels. Socrates exemplified this principle with his famous declaration that, "The only thing I know is that I know nothing." Socrates understood that true wisdom begins with intellectual humility, the recognition that your current understanding is always incomplete, and that growth requires continuously questioning and updating your beliefs based on new evidence and experience. This intellectual humility is not self-doubt or lack of confidence. It's strategic flexibility that allows you to learn and adapt more quickly than people who are rigidly attached to their existing beliefs. When you hold your beliefs lightly, you can update them easily when you encounter new information or better strategies. You can develop this intellectual flexibility by regularly questioning your own assumptions. Why do I believe what I believe about money? What evidence supports my beliefs about what's possible for my career? How might my beliefs about relationships be limiting my ability to create deeper connections? What beliefs do I hold about my own capabilities? And how might those beliefs be either empowering or limiting my potential? This isn't about becoming wishy-washy or uncertain about everything. It's about becoming more skillful at distinguishing between beliefs that serve your objectives and beliefs that limit your potential. It's about becoming someone who updates their thinking based on results rather than someone who defends their thinking regardless of results. Cornelius Vanderbilt demonstrated this kind of strategic thinking flexibility throughout his career. Vanderbilt began in the steamboat business, but when he recognized that railroads would eventually replace steamboats for long-distance transportation, he systematically transitioned his business focus rather than trying to defend his existing investments. This willingness to change direction based on changing conditions allowed Vanderbilt to build one of the largest fortunes in American history. The 12th principle of thought training involves developing what Grant Cardone, in the 10X rule, calls massive action thinking. Most people think in terms of incremental improvements and modest goals, but extraordinary results require extraordinary thinking. When you train your mind to think in terms of 10 times bigger outcomes, you naturally begin to consider strategies and possibilities that would never occur to someone thinking incrementally. This doesn't mean being unrealistic or ignoring practical constraints. It means expanding your mental framework to consider possibilities that initially seem impossible, but may actually be achievable with the right strategies and sufficient commitment. When John F. Kennedy announced the goal of landing on the moon within a decade, it seemed impossible based on existing technology and knowledge. But thinking in terms of that impossible goal inspired innovations and efforts that made the impossible inevitable. You can apply this same principle to your personal and professional objectives. Instead of asking, "What's a realistic goal for my income next year?" ask, "What would I need to do to increase my income by 10 times next year?" Instead of asking, "How can I improve my health a little bit?" ask, "What would it take to achieve the best physical condition of my life?" These bigger questions force your mind to consider strategies, resources, and possibilities that smaller questions never reveal. They activate what psychologists call divergent thinking, the ability to generate creative solutions and innovative approaches. Most importantly, they train your mind to see opportunities where others see only obstacles. Genghis Khan exemplified this kind of expansive thinking when he set out to create the largest land empire in human history. Khan didn't start with modest territorial ambitions that he gradually expanded. He began with the vision of uniting all the peoples under one rule and then developed the military strategies, political alliances, and organizational systems necessary to achieve that seemingly impossible objective. Khan's success came not just from military prowess, but from his ability to think systematically about the factors that create lasting empire. He understood that conquering territory was relatively easy compared to maintaining control over diverse populations across vast distances. So he developed innovative communication systems, legal frameworks, and cultural integration strategies that allowed his empire to function effectively, despite its enormous size and diversity. The 13th principle of thought training involves understanding the relationship between your thoughts and your energy levels. Different types of thinking produce different energetic states. Thoughts of gratitude, possibility, and purpose generate energy and vitality. Thoughts of criticism, limitation, and resentment drain energy and create fatigue. This isn't just psychological, it's physiological. When you think empowering thoughts, your body produces different neurotransmitters and hormones than when you think disempowering thoughts. Positive thinking literally changes your body chemistry in ways that enhance your physical capabilities, your immune system function, and your overall sense of well-being. Isaac Newton understood this principle when he developed his revolutionary theories about physics and mathematics. Newton would often work for days with minimal food or sleep, sustained entirely by his fascination with the problems he was solving. His passion for discovery generated the energy necessary to sustain extraordinary levels of mental effort over extended periods. But Newton also understood the importance of mental recovery and renewal. He would alternate periods of intense focus with periods of contemplation and reflection. He recognized that sustainable high performance requires both periods of concentrated effort and periods of restoration and integration. You can apply this understanding by paying attention to how different thoughts affect your energy levels. Notice which types of thinking make you feel more alive, more capable, and more motivated. Notice which types of thinking make you feel drained, discouraged, or lethargic. Then consciously choose to spend more mental time on thoughts that energize you and less time on thoughts that deplete you. This doesn't mean avoiding all challenging or difficult thoughts. Sometimes you need to think through problems, analyze obstacles, or make difficult decisions. But you can learn to approach even challenging thinking in ways that generate energy rather than drain it. Instead of dwelling on problems, focus on solutions. Instead of worrying about obstacles, concentrate on strategies for overcoming them. Instead of criticizing what's wrong, envision what's possible. The 14th principle of thought training involves mastering what Eckhart Tolle calls present moment awareness. Most people live either in the past, replaying old experiences and reinforcing old patterns, or in the future, worrying about things that may never happen, but all your power exists in the present moment. This is where decisions are made, actions are taken, and new realities are created. Abraham Lincoln exemplified this principle during the most challenging period of American history. Despite the enormous pressures of leading the nation through civil war, Lincoln maintained what his contemporaries describe as an unusual ability to remain calm and clear-headed in crisis situations. Lincoln had trained his mind to focus completely on whatever situation was immediately in front of him, rather than becoming overwhelmed by the magnitude of all the challenges he was facing simultaneously. Lincoln would often tell stories and jokes even during the most serious meetings, not because he wasn't taking the situation seriously, but because he understood that maintaining present-moment clarity and emotional balance was essential for making wise decisions. He knew that when your mind is scattered across multiple problems and possibilities, you cannot access your full intelligence and wisdom for addressing any single challenge effectively. You can develop this same present-moment focus through what I call single-tasking meditation. Instead of trying to sit in formal meditation, practice giving your complete attention to whatever activity you're engaged in. When you're eating, focus entirely on the taste, texture, and experience of eating. When you're walking, pay attention to the physical sensations of movement and the environment around you. When you're in conversation, listen with such complete attention that you forget about everything else. This practice trains your mind to operate from presence rather than from scattered thinking. When you're fully present, you naturally make better decisions because you're accessing your complete intelligence rather than operating from partial attention. You also naturally feel more peaceful and confident because you're not carrying the mental burden of dozens of unrelated concerns simultaneously. The 15th principle involves understanding what Tony Robbins calls the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. Many people train their thoughts for external success, but neglect to train their thoughts for internal satisfaction and meaning. This creates the phenomenon of successful people who achieve their goals, but feel empty or dissatisfied despite their accomplishments. True mental mastery involves training your thoughts, not just for what you want to achieve, but for who you want to become in the process of achievement. It involves aligning your external objectives with your internal values so that the journey towards success is as fulfilling as the destination itself. Mahatma Gandhi understood this principle profoundly. Gandhi's external objective was Indian independence, but his internal objective was to demonstrate that lasting change could be achieved through non-violent means rooted in spiritual principles. For Gandhi, the method was as important as the outcome because he understood that how you achieve something determines the quality and sustainability of what you achieve. Gandhi trained his thoughts daily through prayer, meditation, and reflection to ensure that his actions remained aligned with his deepest values, even under extreme pressure. He understood that external circumstances will always test your internal commitments, and that true strength comes from maintaining your principles regardless of what others do or what challenges you face. You can apply this same approach by regularly examining not just what you want to achieve, but why you want to achieve it and how you want to achieve it. What kind of person do you want to become in the process of pursuing your goals? What values do you want to embody regardless of external circumstances? How can you ensure that your methods for achieving success align with your definition of who you want to be? This internal alignment creates what psychologists call congruence, a state where your thoughts, emotions, values, and actions all support each other rather than creating internal conflict. When you achieve congruence, you naturally feel more confident, more peaceful, and more powerful because all your mental and emotional resources are flowing in the same direction. The 16th principle of thought training involves developing what I call strategic optimism, the ability to maintain positive expectations while preparing for multiple scenarios. This is different from naive optimism that ignores potential challenges, and it's different from pessimism that expects negative outcomes. Strategic optimism involves training your mind to expect positive outcomes while simultaneously preparing to handle whatever actually occurs. Winston Churchill demonstrated this principle throughout World War II. Churchill maintained absolute confidence that Britain would ultimately prevail, and he communicated this confidence to the British people in ways that sustained their morale during the darkest periods of the war. But Churchill also prepared extensively for various possible scenarios, including the possibility that Britain might need to continue fighting even if invaded. This combination of positive expectation and thorough preparation gave Churchill the mental flexibility to respond effectively to rapidly changing circumstances while maintaining the emotional stability necessary for wise leadership under extreme pressure. He understood that hope without preparation is wishful thinking, but preparation without hope is paralyzing fear. You can develop strategic optimism by regularly engaging in what military strategists call scenario planning. For any important goal or decision, spend time thinking through multiple possible outcomes, best case, worst case, and most likely case scenarios. Develop specific strategies for maximizing the probability of positive outcomes while minimizing the potential impact of negative outcomes. This practice accomplishes several important objectives simultaneously. It reduces anxiety because you've mentally prepared for various possibilities rather than just hoping everything works out perfectly. It increases confidence because you know you can handle whatever happens. It improves decision-making because you've considered a wider range of factors and possibilities. Most importantly, it allows you to maintain positive expectations without being naive about potential challenges. The 17th principle involves understanding the relationship between your thoughts and your relationships. The quality of your thinking directly influences the quality of your relationships, and the quality of your relationships directly influences the quality of your opportunities, your emotional well-being, and your overall success. People who train their minds to think with appreciation, curiosity, and goodwill naturally create stronger, more supportive relationships than people who think with criticism, suspicion, or self-absorption. This isn't just about being nice to people, It's about understanding that relationship skills are mental skills that can be systematically developed. Andrew Carnegie understood this principle when he developed what he called his mastermind groups, carefully selected groups of advisors and collaborators who work together toward common objectives. But Carnegie didn't just assemble these groups randomly. He specifically sought out people whose thinking complemented and enhanced his own, and he developed his ability to think in ways that brought out the best in others. Carnegie trained his mind to look for the strengths and capabilities in others, rather than focusing on their weaknesses or limitations. He understood that when you focus your attention on people's positive qualities, you naturally bring out more of those qualities, which benefits everyone involved. When you focus on people's negative qualities, you often reinforce those qualities, which creates problems for everyone. You can apply this same approach by consciously training your mind to look for opportunities to appreciate, encourage, and support the people around you. This doesn't mean being artificially positive or ignoring genuine problems. It means choosing to focus your mental attention on what's working in your relationships rather than what's not working, and looking for opportunities to contribute to others' success rather than just focusing on your own objectives. This shift in thinking creates what psychologists call positive reinforcement cycles in your relationships. When you consistently think about others in positive ways, you naturally treat them more positively, which encourages them to respond more positively to you, which reinforces your positive thoughts about them. Over time, this creates relationships characterized by mutual support, trust, and collaboration rather than competition, criticism, or conflict. The 18th principle involves developing what Napoleon Hill called applied faith, the ability to maintain confidence in your objectives even when current evidence seems to contradict the possibility of achieving them. This is perhaps the most challenging aspect of thought training because it requires you to trust your vision more than your current circumstances. Thomas Edison exemplified applied faith throughout his career. When Edison was working on the phonograph, the motion picture camera, and dozens of other inventions, he often spent years developing devices that most people considered impossible or impractical. Edison maintained his confidence in these inventions, not because he had proof they would work, but because he had trained his mind to focus on possibilities rather than limitations. Edison understood that breakthrough achievements always require a period where you're working toward outcomes that don't yet exist and may not even seem possible based on current knowledge or technology. During these periods, your ability to maintain faith in your vision becomes the determining factor in whether you persist long enough to achieve the breakthrough or give up before success becomes visible. You can develop applied faith by regularly reminding yourself that everything that exists today was once considered impossible by someone. The airplane was impossible until the Wright brothers achieved it. Space travel was impossible until it was accomplished. Personal computers were impossible until they became commonplace. The internet was impossible until it connected the world. The pattern is always the same. Someone envisions something that doesn't currently exist, maintains faith in that vision despite skepticism and setbacks, and persists in taking action toward that vision until it becomes reality. Applied faith is not blind belief. It's strategic confidence based on understanding that human beings have consistently achieved things that were previously considered impossible. Before we continue exploring these principles, I want to take a moment to recognize something important about you. The fact that you're still engaged with this content after all these insights and strategies tells me something significant about your character. You're not someone who's looking for quick fixes or easy answers. You understand that real transformation requires sustained attention and consistent application. That kind of commitment to growth is rare and valuable. If you're getting value from these ideas and you want to continue receiving content that supports your growth and success, I hope you'll subscribe to our channel and share this video with others who are committed to excellence. We're building a community of people who understand that success is not accidental, but the result of systematic preparation and consistent action. The 19th principle of thought training involves understanding what James Clear calls atomic habits, the power of small, consistent changes in your thinking patterns to create massive transformations over time. Most people underestimate the cumulative impact of small improvements and overestimate what they can achieve through dramatic, short-term efforts. But the most successful people understand that sustainable change happens through what Clear calls marginal gains. small improvements that compound over time to create extraordinary results. If you improve your thinking habits by just 1% each day, you'll improve by over 37 times over the course of a year. These small improvements are almost invisible in the short term, but they create massive differences in the long term. Charles M. Schwab, one of Andrew Carnegie's most successful protégés, understood this principle when he developed his daily planning system. Each evening, Schwab would write down the 6 most important tasks he needed to accomplish the following day, arranged in order of priority. The next day, he would work on these tasks in order, focusing completely on one task before moving to the next. This simple system seemed almost trivial, but it created extraordinary results because it ensured that Schwab's daily thinking and actions were always aligned with his most important objectives. Instead of letting his mental energy get scattered across dozens of random activities, he trained his mind to focus systematically on what mattered most. You can apply this same principle by identifying one small improvement you can make in your daily thinking habits. Perhaps you can start each day by spending 5 minutes writing down 3 things you're grateful for. Maybe you can end each day by reviewing what you accomplished and planning your priorities for tomorrow. Or you might commit to replacing one negative thought pattern with a more empowering alternative each day. The key is to choose improvements that are small enough to implement consistently, but significant enough to create meaningful change over time. Consistency is more important than intensity when it comes to rewiring your mental patterns. A small improvement practiced every day for a year will transform your thinking more dramatically than a major effort that you can only maintain for a few weeks. The 20th principle involves understanding the relationship between your thoughts and your standards. Your standards, what you're willing to accept versus what you demand from yourself and your circumstances, largely determine the quality of your results. When you raise your standards, you automatically begin thinking and acting in ways that align with those higher standards. Most people have low standards disguised as being realistic. They accept mediocre relationships because that's just how relationships are. They accept limited financial results because money isn't everything. They accept unfulfilling work because work isn't supposed to be enjoyable. But these aren't realistic assessments. They're mental habits that create self-fulfilling prophecies. John D. Rockefeller understood this principle when he set his early business standards. Rockefeller didn't just want to be successful in the oil business. He wanted to create the most efficient, most reliable, and most profitable oil company in the world. These extraordinarily high standards forced him to think more strategically, work more systematically, and innovate more consistently than his competitors. Rockefeller's high standards weren't just about external results, they were about internal integrity. He insisted on treating customers fairly, dealing honestly with suppliers, and maintaining ethical business practices even when competitors were cutting corners. These high ethical standards created long-term competitive advantages because they built trust and reputation that translated into customer loyalty and business partnerships. You can raise your standards by regularly asking yourself, what am I currently accepting that I should not accept? What would I need to change about my thinking, my habits, or my actions to create the quality of results I really want? What standards do I need to establish for myself to ensure that my daily choices align with my long-term objectives? When you raise your standards, you initially create what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable feeling that comes when your current reality doesn't match your new expectations. Most people resolve this dissonance by lowering their standards back to match their current reality, but successful people resolve it by raising their actions to match their higher standards. The 21st principle involves developing what Steven Pressfield calls resistance management, the ability to identify and overcome the internal forces that prevent you from thinking and acting in alignment with your objectives. Pressfield explains that resistance is the internal force that keeps you stuck in familiar patterns, even when those patterns don't serve your goals. Resistance manifests as procrastination, self-doubt, perfectionism, distraction, and dozens of other mental patterns that feel rational in the moment, but systematically prevent you from making progress toward your most important objectives. The key to overcoming resistance is not to eliminate it. Resistance is a natural part of growth, but to recognize it and act in spite of it. Leonardo da Vinci faced enormous resistance when he was developing his artistic and scientific innovations. During the Renaissance, Many of Da Vinci's ideas seemed not just unconventional, but heretical or impossible. He faced criticism from religious authorities, skepticism from other artists and scientists, and frequent failures in his experimental work. But Da Vinci had trained his mind to see resistance as confirmation that he was working on something important rather than as evidence that he should give up. He understood that truly innovative work always encounters resistance because innovation, by definition, challenges existing assumptions and comfortable patterns. Da Vinci developed what we might call resistance rituals, specific practices he used to maintain his focus and motivation when facing internal or external opposition. He would spend time in nature to restore his sense of wonder and possibility. He would study the work of masters in various fields to remind himself that breakthrough achievements are always possible. He would engage in physical exercise to maintain the energy and confidence necessary for sustained creative work. You can develop your own resistance management strategies by first learning to recognize the specific ways resistance manifests in your thinking and behavior. Do you tend to procrastinate when facing important but challenging tasks? Do you get distracted by less important but easier activities when you should be focusing on your priorities? Do you create perfectionist standards that prevent you from taking action because nothing ever feels quite ready? Once you recognize your specific resistance patterns, you can develop what Pressfield calls professional habits, consistent practices that help you show up and do the work regardless of how you feel in the moment. Professional habits are based on commitment rather than motivation, on systematic action rather than emotional inspiration. The 20-second principle involves understanding what T. Harv Eker calls wealth consciousness, the specific thought patterns and mental habits that naturally create financial abundance. Most people have what Eker calls poverty consciousness, unconscious beliefs and thought patterns that limit their financial potential even when they consciously want to create wealth. Wealth consciousness involves training your mind to think about money, value creation, and financial opportunities in ways that align with abundance rather than scarcity. This doesn't mean being unrealistic about financial challenges or ignoring practical constraints. It means approaching financial decisions and opportunities from a mindset of possibility and value creation rather than from fear and limitation. J.P. Morgan exemplified wealth consciousness throughout his career. Morgan didn't just think about accumulating money. He thought about creating value, building systems, and developing resources that would generate wealth for many people over long periods of time. Morgan understood that sustainable wealth comes from creating value for others, not from extracting value from others. Morgan also understood the importance of what he called financial discipline, the ability to make financial decisions based on long-term strategy rather than short-term emotions. When markets were panicking and other investors were selling, Morgan would often buy high-quality assets at reduced prices. When markets were euphoric and other investors were speculating, Morgan would often take profits and preserve capital. This kind of financial discipline requires training your mind to think independently of crowd psychology and market emotions. It requires developing the ability to see long-term patterns and opportunities that others miss because they're focused on short-term fluctuations and immediate gratification. You can develop wealth consciousness by regularly examining your beliefs and assumptions about money. Do you believe that making money requires sacrificing your values or taking advantage of others? Do you believe that wealthy people are inherently greedy or unethical? Do you believe that there's a limited amount of wealth available, so one person's gain necessarily means another person's loss? These beliefs may feel true based on limited examples or cultural messages, but they're not accurate representations of how wealth actually works. Sustainable wealth comes from creating value, solving problems, and serving others in ways that make their lives better. When you create genuine value, everyone benefits. You receive financial compensation, and others receive products, services, or opportunities that improve their circumstances. The 23rd principle involves developing what Ray Dalio calls principled thinking, the ability to identify and apply fundamental principles that work across different situations and circumstances. Instead of memorizing specific strategies or tactics, principled thinking involves understanding the underlying principles that make strategies effective, so you can adapt and innovate as circumstances change. Marcus Aurelius exemplified principled thinking in his approach to leadership and personal development. Instead of just learning specific techniques for handling different situations, Marcus Aurelius identified universal principles, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance that could guide his decisions regardless of the specific circumstances he faced. These principles served as what Aurelius called his inner citadel, a stable foundation for thinking and decision-making that remained constant even when external circumstances were chaotic or unpredictable. By training his mind to think from principles rather than just reacting to circumstances, Aurelius was able to maintain clarity and effectiveness even under extreme pressure. You can develop principled thinking by regularly asking yourself, what are the fundamental principles that guide my most important decisions? When I'm most effective, what underlying principles am I applying? What principles do I see consistently applied by people I respect and admire? How can I organize my thinking around these principles rather than just responding to immediate circumstances? This principled approach to thinking creates what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt your strategies while maintaining consistency in your core values and objectives. When you think from principles, you can innovate and adjust without losing your sense of direction or identity. The 24th principle involves understanding what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind principle, the power of combining your thinking with the thinking of others who share your objectives and complement your capabilities. Hill discovered that the most successful people he studied rarely achieved their greatest accomplishments in isolation. They developed what he called mastermind alliances with others who enhanced their individual capabilities. Andrew Carnegie built his steel empire through mastermind alliances with partners who brought different skills, knowledge, and resources to their shared objectives. Carnegie understood that his individual thinking, no matter how disciplined and focused, had limitations. By combining his thinking with the thinking of carefully selected partners, he could achieve results that none of them could accomplish alone. But Carnegie's mastermind alliances weren't just business partnerships, they were thinking partnerships. Carnegie and his associates would regularly meet to share ideas, challenge each other's assumptions, and explore possibilities that might not occur to any individual thinking alone. These collaborative thinking sessions often generated innovations and strategies that became the foundation for major business breakthroughs. You can apply the mastermind principle by identifying other people who share your commitment to growth and excellence, and creating regular opportunities to share ideas, discuss challenges, and explore possibilities together. This might involve joining or creating a formal mastermind group, or it might involve developing informal relationships with people whose thinking challenges and enhances your own. The key is to seek out people who think differently than you do, but who share your commitment to achievement and integrity. Different perspectives and approaches will expand your thinking in ways that similar perspectives cannot. But shared values and objectives will ensure that your collaborative thinking serves constructive purposes rather than just creating interesting conversations. The 25th principle involves developing what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, the belief that your abilities, intelligence, and character can be developed through effort, strategy, and learning from setbacks. This is fundamentally different from a fixed mindset that views abilities as static traits that cannot be significantly changed. People with growth mindsets naturally think about challenges as opportunities to develop new capabilities, rather than as threats to their self-image. They view failures as information about what strategies need adjustment, rather than as evidence of permanent limitations. They see effort as the path to mastery, rather than as a sign of inadequate ability. Nikola Tesla exemplified growth mindset thinking throughout his career. When Tesla's experiments failed, which happened frequently, he would analyze what went wrong, adjust his approach, and try again with modifications based on what he had learned. Tesla understood that breakthrough innovations require systematic experimentation, and experimentation necessarily involves many failed attempts before successful results are achieved. Tesla also understood that developing expertise in any field requires what he called progressive challenges, continuously taking on problems that are slightly beyond your current capabilities. This approach ensures that you're constantly developing new skills and expanding your knowledge rather than just repeating familiar activities that you've already mastered. You can develop growth mindset thinking by regularly reframing challenges and setbacks in terms of learning and development rather than success and failure. Instead of asking, "Am I smart enough to solve this problem?" Ask, "What do I need to learn in order to solve this problem?" Instead of thinking, "I'm not good at this," think, "I'm not good at this yet." These small changes in your internal language create significant changes in your emotional responses to challenges and your persistence in pursuing difficult objectives. When you believe that abilities can be developed, you naturally invest more effort in developing them. When you believe that abilities are fixed, you naturally avoid situations that might reveal limitations. The 26th principle involves understanding what Daniel Kahneman calls thinking, fast and slow, the difference between automatic, intuitive thinking and deliberate, analytical thinking. Both types of thinking are valuable, but they serve different purposes and are appropriate for different situations. Fast thinking allows you to make quick decisions based on patterns and experiences you've accumulated over time. This type of thinking is essential for efficiency and effectiveness in familiar situations. But fast thinking can also lead to errors when you're facing situations that are different from your previous experiences, or when you're making important decisions that require careful analysis. Slow thinking involves consciously analyzing situations, considering multiple perspectives, and making deliberate choices based on your objectives and values, rather than just your immediate impulses or familiar patterns. This type of thinking is essential for important decisions, complex problems, and situations where the stakes are high. Benjamin Franklin understood this distinction when he developed what he called his decision-making process. For important decisions, Franklin would write down all the factors favoring one choice on one side of a piece of paper and all the factors favoring the alternative choice on the other side. He would then systematically consider each factor, weighing their relative importance and looking for considerations he might have missed. This process forced Franklin to slow down his thinking and consider decisions more thoroughly than his initial impulses might suggest. It also helped him identify his unconscious biases and assumptions that might otherwise influence his choices without his awareness. You can apply this same approach by recognizing when situations call for slow thinking rather than fast thinking. Important financial decisions, career choices, relationship decisions, and strategic business decisions generally benefit from systematic analysis rather than intuitive responses. But daily routine decisions, social interactions, and familiar tasks can usually be handled effectively with fast thinking. The key is developing what psychologists call metacognition, awareness of your own thinking processes. When you notice that you're about to make an important decision, you can consciously slow down your thinking and engage your analytical capabilities rather than just going with your first impulse. We're approaching the culmination of our exploration of these profound principles. But before we reach our conclusion, I want to acknowledge something remarkable about your commitment to learning and growth. You've stayed engaged through these detailed insights and strategies, which demonstrates the kind of sustained attention and commitment that separates people who achieve extraordinary results from those who settle for ordinary outcomes. If you've found value in these ideas and you want to continue your journey of growth and success, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel and join our community of people who are committed to excellence. We're creating content specifically for individuals like you who understand that success is not an accident, but the result of systematic preparation and consistent action. The 27th principle involves understanding what Viktor Frankl called the space between stimulus and response, the moment of choice that exists between what happens to you and how you respond to what happens. This space is where your freedom lies, and developing your ability to consciously use this space is perhaps the most important aspect of mental training. Most people react automatically to circumstances, emotions, and other people's behavior. They let external events determine their internal states and their behavioral responses. But mentally disciplined individuals have trained themselves to pause in that space between stimulus and response, and consciously choose thoughts and actions that align with their objectives and values. Frankl developed this understanding during his experience in Nazi concentration camps, where he observed that some prisoners maintained their humanity, dignity, and hope even under the most extreme circumstances, while others lost their sense of purpose and became bitter or despairing. The difference was not in their external circumstances, which were equally horrific for everyone, but in their internal responses to those circumstances. Frankl realized that while he could not control what was happening to him, he could control his attitude toward what was happening. He could choose to focus on meaning and purpose, rather than on suffering and injustice. He could choose to maintain his identity as a psychiatrist, husband, and human being rather than allowing himself to be defined by his circumstances as a prisoner. This same principle applies to every situation you face, regardless of whether the circumstances are positive or negative. When you receive criticism, you can choose to respond with defensiveness or with curiosity about what you might learn. When you face setbacks, you can choose to respond with discouragement or with determination to find alternative approaches. When you encounter opportunities, you can choose to respond with fear of failure or with excitement about possibilities. The key to developing this conscious choice ability is what Frankl called self-detachment, the ability to step back mentally and observe your own thoughts and emotions rather than being completely identified with them. When you can observe your thoughts, you realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that can choose which thoughts to focus on and which thoughts to dismiss. You can develop this self-detachment through what I call observer practice. Throughout the day, periodically ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? How am I responding to this situation? This simple practice of self-observation creates the mental space necessary for conscious choice, rather than automatic reaction. The 28th and final principle involves understanding what I call legacy thinking. The ability to consider the long-term impact and meaning of your thoughts and actions beyond their immediate effects on your personal circumstances. Legacy thinking naturally elevates the quality of your decisions and the consistency of your efforts because it connects your daily choices to purposes that are larger than immediate gratification or comfort. Abraham Lincoln exemplified legacy thinking throughout his presidency. Lincoln understood that his decisions would influence not just the immediate outcome of the Civil War, but the long-term direction of American society and the future of human freedom around the world. This awareness of his historical responsibility gave Lincoln the strength to make difficult decisions and persist through enormous challenges. Lincoln would often ask himself, what kind of nation are we creating for future generations? What precedents am I establishing through my actions? How will history judge the choices I'm making today? These questions helped Lincoln maintain perspective during the most difficult periods of his presidency and make decisions based on long-term principles rather than short-term political pressures. You can apply legacy thinking by regularly considering the long-term impact of your thoughts, decisions, and actions. What kind of example are you setting for your children, your colleagues, and your community? What kind of person are you becoming through your daily choices? How do you want to be remembered? And what would need to change about your current approach to create that kind of legacy? Legacy thinking doesn't require you to have grandiose ambitions or public responsibilities. It simply means recognizing that your life has impact beyond your immediate personal experience and choosing to use that impact constructively. When you think in terms of legacy, you naturally make choices that reflect your highest values and your deepest sense of purpose. Now, as we reach the conclusion of this comprehensive exploration of mental training principles, I want to synthesize these insights into a practical framework that you can immediately begin applying to transform your thinking and, consequently, your results. The foundation of all mental training is the recognition that your thoughts are not random events happening to you, but powerful tools that you can learn to use with increasing skill and precision. Every thought you think is either moving you closer to your objectives or further away from them. There are no neutral thoughts when it comes to creating the life you want to live. Your daily practice of mental training should include 4 essential elements. First, begin each day with what I call intentional thinking, consciously choosing the mental focus that will guide your actions throughout the day. This might involve visualization of your goals, affirmation of your capabilities, or simply setting clear intentions about how you want to think and behave. Second, develop what I call pattern awareness, the ability to notice your automatic thought patterns and consciously redirect them when they don't serve your objectives. This requires what we discussed as metacognition, thinking about your thinking. Throughout the day, periodically ask yourself, what am I thinking about right now? Is this thought helping me or hindering me? What would be a more empowering way to think about this situation? Third, practice what I call strategic questioning. using questions to direct your mental focus toward solutions, possibilities, and growth rather than toward problems, limitations, and complaints. Instead of asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this experience?" Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" ask, "What would I attempt if I knew I could not fail?" The quality of your questions determines the quality of your thinking, which determines the quality of your results. Fourth, end each day with what I call integration reflection, reviewing what happened during the day, what you learned, and how you can apply those lessons to create even better results tomorrow. This practice ensures that your experiences become wisdom rather than just memories, and that your growth continues accelerating over time. These four practices, intentional thinking, pattern awareness, strategic questioning, and integration reflection, form what I call the mental mastery framework. When practiced consistently, this framework will systematically rewire your mental patterns in ways that support your highest objectives and your deepest values. But remember that mental training, like physical training, requires consistency over time to create lasting results. You wouldn't expect to transform your physical condition by exercising intensely for 1 week and then stopping. Similarly, you can't expect to transform your mental patterns through sporadic effort. Mental mastery requires what we discussed as the compound effect, small, consistent improvements that accumulate into extraordinary transformation over time. As you begin implementing these principles, be patient with yourself while maintaining high standards for your commitment. You will sometimes forget to apply these practices. You will sometimes fall back into old patterns of thinking. You will sometimes feel discouraged when results don't come as quickly as you'd like. This is all part of the process, not evidence that the process isn't working. What matters is not that you execute these practices perfectly, but that you return to them consistently. Every time you catch yourself thinking in limiting ways and consciously redirect your thoughts toward more empowering alternatives, you strengthen your mental discipline. Every time you choose to see possibilities instead of problems, you reinforce your identity as someone who creates solutions. Every time you persist in your mental training despite temporary setbacks, you build the kind of character that achieves extraordinary results. The historical figures we've discussed throughout this exploration, Marcus Aurelius, Thomas Edison, Andrew Carnegie, Abraham Lincoln, and all the others, were not born with superior mental capabilities. They developed their mental mastery through the same kind of systematic practice that's available to you. They faced the same challenges of maintaining focus, overcoming doubt, and persisting through difficulties that you face. The difference is that they committed to the daily practices that created extraordinary results over time. You have within you right now the same creative power that built the greatest enterprises, invented the most revolutionary technologies, and solved the most challenging problems in human history. The only question is whether you will commit to the systematic development of that power through consistent mental training. Your thoughts today are creating your reality tomorrow. Your mental habits today are determining your character tomorrow. Your commitment to growth today is shaping your legacy tomorrow. This is both the tremendous responsibility and the extraordinary opportunity of being human. You have the power to consciously participate in creating your own experience and contributing to the world around you. As we conclude this journey together, I want to leave you with a challenge and an invitation. The challenge is to commit to implementing at least one of these principles every day for the next 30 days. Choose the principle that resonates most strongly with you or addresses your most important area for improvement. Apply it consistently, observe the results, and then gradually add other principles as your mental discipline strengthens. The invitation is to join our community of people who are committed to excellence, growth, and positive impact. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and share this content with others who are ready to transform their lives through the power of trained thinking. We're creating resources and support specifically for people who understand that success is not accidental, but the result of systematic preparation and consistent action. Remember that transformation is not a destination you reach, but a process you live. Every day offers new opportunities to strengthen your mental discipline, deepen your self-awareness, and align your actions more closely with your highest values and objectives. Every thought you think consciously, rather than automatically, every choice you make from principle rather than impulse, every action you take from vision rather than circumstance, These are the building blocks of a life of extraordinary achievement and deep fulfillment. You have everything within you right now to begin this transformation. You don't need permission from others, perfect circumstances, or additional resources. You need only the commitment to begin where you are, with what you have, taking the next right step in the direction of who you're called to become. The world needs what you have to offer when you're operating from your highest capabilities and deepest wisdom. Your family, your community, and future generations will benefit from the example you set and the contributions you make when you develop your full potential. This is not just about personal success. It's about using your success to serve purposes that are larger than yourself. Train your thoughts for success every day, not because success will make you happy, but because the person you become in pursuit of meaningful success will naturally experience the kind of deep satisfaction and lasting fulfillment that makes life truly worthwhile. The journey of mental mastery is itself the reward, and the external results you achieve are simply the natural expression of the internal transformation you create. Your mind is the most powerful tool you will ever possess. It is the creative force that will determine whether you live a life of limitation or a life of boundless possibility. Every great achievement in human history began as a thought in someone's mind. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every moment of triumph started with someone who trained their thinking to see beyond current circumstances to what could be possible. Today marks the beginning of your conscious participation in this creative process. Today you begin the systematic development of the mental disciplines that will serve you for the rest of your life. Today you start building the unshakable belief, the fearless persistence, and the visionary clarity that characterize all extraordinary achievers. Remember that the principles we've explored are not just intellectual concepts to be understood, but practical tools to be applied. Knowledge without application is merely entertainment. But knowledge applied consistently becomes wisdom, and wisdom applied persistently becomes power. The power to create the life you truly desire and to contribute meaningfully to the world around you. As you begin this practice of mental training, you're joining a tradition that extends back through centuries of human achievement. You're connecting yourself to the same principles that guided Marcus Aurelius in leading an empire, that inspired Thomas Edison to illuminate the world, that enabled Andrew Carnegie to build industrial foundations, and that empowered Abraham Lincoln to preserve a nation. These principles work regardless of your current circumstances, your background, or your previous experiences. They work because they're based on fundamental laws of human consciousness and achievement that transcend time, culture, and individual differences. The path ahead will challenge you to become more disciplined, more focused, and more committed than you may have been in the past. There will be days when the old patterns of thinking seem easier and more comfortable than the new disciplines you're developing. There will be moments when you question whether this systematic approach to mental training is worth the effort required. In those moments, remember that every person who has ever achieved something significant has faced the same doubts, the same resistance, and the same temptation to return to familiar but limiting patterns. What separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who settle for ordinary outcomes is not the absence of these challenges, but the decision to persist in spite of them. Your commitment to mental training is ultimately a commitment to becoming the fullest expression of your potential. It's a decision to stop accepting limitations that you have the power to overcome. It's a choice to start creating the kind of results that reflect your deepest values and your highest aspirations. This is not about perfection. This is about progress. This is not about never making mistakes. This is about learning from every experience and using that learning to make better choices going forward. This is not about comparing yourself to others. This is about becoming the best version of yourself that you're capable of becoming. The world is waiting for what you have to offer when you're operating from your full potential. There are problems that need your unique perspective to solve them. There are opportunities that need your particular combination of skills and insights to realize them. There are people who need the example of your growth and achievement to inspire their own transformation. But none of this happens accidentally. It happens through the systematic application of the principles we've explored. It happens through the daily practice of training your thoughts to support your objectives rather than undermine them. It happens through the consistent choice to see possibilities where others see problems, to find opportunities where others see obstacles, and to persist where others give up. This is your moment to begin. This is your opportunity to take conscious control of the creative power of your mind and direct it toward outcomes that reflect your deepest purposes and your highest values. The principles are proven. The methods are available. The only question remaining is whether you will commit to the consistent application that transforms principles into results. I believe you will make that commitment because you've demonstrated through your attention to these ideas that you're someone who understands the value of systematic preparation and consistent action. You're someone who recognizes that extraordinary results require extraordinary commitment. You're someone who is ready to invest the time and energy necessary to develop your full potential. Train your thoughts for success every day. Make it a practice, make it a discipline, make it a way of life. The rewards, not just the external achievements, but the internal transformation, the deep satisfaction, and the lasting fulfillment, will exceed anything you can currently imagine. Your journey of mental mastery begins now. Your transformation into the person you're truly capable of becoming starts with your very next thought. Choose that thought wisely, and let it be the first of millions of thoughts that will create the extraordinary life you deserve to live. If this message has inspired you to begin or continue your journey of growth and achievement, I encourage you one final time to subscribe to our channel and share this content with others who are ready to transform their lives through the power of trained thinking. Together, we can create a community of individuals committed to excellence, mutual support, and positive impact in the world. The greatest adventure of your life, the adventure of discovering and expressing your full potential, is just beginning. Train your thoughts for success every day and watch as your external world transforms to match the internal world you consciously create. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Make them wisely. Make them boldly. Make them now. Your mind has been forged a little stronger today, but the real test isn't what you learned, it's what you do with it. Take action, dominate your day, and remember, we're not just building better thoughts, we're forging unstoppable lives. The forge doesn't stop, and neither do you. If this episode hit you where it counts, subscribe to Mental Forge Academy and join the Brotherhood of Champions who refuse to settle for ordinary. Go transform, strike while the mind is hot.